My wife said, "My family comes first, you're second." I didn't argue. I just moved myself to first. New accounts, new rules, new life. Then her family needed money and everything changed. My wife said it like it was a fact of nature, not an opinion, not something cruel she was choosing to say, just a simple truth she expected me to accept without flinching. My family always comes first. You're second. The way she said it was almost casual, like she was explaining why the sky is blue or why water boils. We were standing in the kitchen, late afternoon light cutting across the counter, my coffee already going cold in my hand. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her, that maybe my brain was filling in something harsher than what she actually meant. I asked her to repeat it quietly, because something in me already knew this was a line you don't hear twice and walk away unchanged. She didn't hesitate. My family comes first. You come second. That's just how it is. 5 years of marriage, and in that moment, everything snapped into focus so cleanly it almost hurt. I remember nodding, actually nodding, and saying, "Good to know." Because once you hear the truth that plainly, there's no point arguing with it. She thought that meant I understood, that I'd finally accepted my place in the hierarchy she'd been living by since day one. What she didn't realize was that I understood something else entirely. If I was second in her life, I didn't need to keep putting her first in mine. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. Everyone says that after the fact, but in my case, the signs were practically neon. Her family had always been involved, not in the warm, healthy way people like to brag about at dinner parties, but in the invasive, entitled way that slowly takes over your life. Her mom had a key to our house and used it. Not emergencies, not quick drop-offs, just letting herself in because she felt like it. Her brother treated our garage like a storage unit, dropping off tools, old furniture, boxes he just needed to keep somewhere for a bit. Family dinners weren't invitations, they were summons. If we didn't show up, there were follow-up calls, guilt-laden texts, passive-aggressive comments the next time we did go. At first, I told myself this was what close families looked like. I grew up in a quieter house, more distance, more boundaries, so I assumed this was just different, not wrong. It took about a year for me to realize that close in her family really meant financially dependent, with no intention of changing. The money part crept in slowly, which is probably why I let it go on as long as I did. Her brother needed $3,000 for a business opportunity. He was vague about the details, but very specific about the urgency. We lent it to him. There was no paperwork, no repayment plan, just a promise that it would come back quickly. It never did. Her sister needed help with rent just this once, which turned into 4 months of us covering the gap. Her parents needed a new AC unit in the middle of summer, and somehow that conversation ended with us paying for it because we were doing better than most, and family helps family. Every time I raised a concern, even gently, I got the same explanation delivered like a moral lesson. This is just how their family works. The unspoken part was that opting out wasn't allowed. I wasn't broke, and that made it easier to justify. I make more than my wife, and I'd always covered a larger share of our expenses. I told myself that helping out didn't really hurt us, that it was temporary, that things would stabilize. What I didn't want to admit was that it wasn't temporary at all. It was a system, and I was the easiest resource to tap. My wife never questioned it. She never asked them to scale back, never set limits, never suggested repayment. She just assumed I'd be there with my card out, smiling, doing my part. I thought being a good husband meant supporting her priorities. I didn't realize her priorities didn't include me. The breaking point wasn't some dramatic blow-up at first. It was my birthday trip. We'd planned it for months. A coast vacation we'd both talked about endlessly when work got stressful. The hotel was booked, time off approved, plans made. I was actually excited in a way I hadn't been for a long time. That morning, her mom called. I was in the kitchen making coffee, half listening while my wife took the call. I heard enough to catch the keywords. Her brother, loan problem. Then I heard my wife say, without missing a beat, "Of course we'll help. I'll cancel our trip." Just like that. No pause, no glance in my direction, no conversation. I stepped in immediately. "We're not canceling," I said. She covered the phone and looked at me like I'd just said something outrageous. "My brother needs us," she said. "Your brother needs a co-signer for a loan he's going to default on?" I replied. "That's not our problem." The look she gave me then was pure disbelief, like I'd broken some unspoken rule. "We're helping him," she said. "The trip can wait." For the first time in 5 years, I said no. Not gently, not with qualifiers, just no. That was when she said it. "My family comes first. You're second." She said it to shut the discussion down, to put me back in my place. Instead, it did the opposite. Something in me clicked into a calm I hadn't felt in years. "Good to know," I said, and I meant it. I finished packing. I took the trip without her, invited a friend instead. I didn't answer her calls. I spent my birthday doing exactly what I wanted, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. When I came back, I didn't yell or demand apologies. I didn't threaten divorce. I just started making changes. Quiet ones, practical ones. I set up a new checking account and moved my direct deposit. I sat down with a calculator and worked out exactly half of our shared expenses. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything. That's what I would pay from now on. Not more, not less. I removed her as an authorized user from my credit card, the one she'd been using to handle her family's constant emergencies. She noticed when her card got declined and stormed into my office demanding answers. I gave them calmly. "We're married," she said. "And according to you, I'm second," I replied. "So, I'm adjusting my life accordingly." She accused me of punishing her, of being cold, of destroying our partnership. I couldn't help laughing at that. Partnership implies equal priority. She'd already told me that wasn't the case. She left for her parents' house for a few days, probably expecting me to cave, to apologize, to reset everything to the way it had been. Instead, I turned the spare room into my office and boxed up her craft supplies. I stopped going to her family's Sunday dinners. I started making plans without her. When she asked where I was going, I said out and left it at that. It drove her crazy. She was used to my availability, my compliance, my money. Now she had none of it. Things stayed tense like that until the real emergency hit. Her brother had been gambling, not casually, not irresponsibly, but recoverably. He was deep into underground games, owed serious money to serious people. $35,000. When my wife came home crying with her entire family in tow, they didn't even bother with small talk. "We need your help," her dad said. I didn't hesitate. "No." The room went silent. They stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "He's family," her mom cried. "He's your family," I said. "Apparently, I'm not." That's when my wife threatened divorce if I didn't pay. I looked at her and said, "Okay." I meant it. That was the moment the marriage was actually over. I asked them all to leave my house. They screamed, cried, insulted me, but they left. The fallout started immediately. Harassment, accusations, damage to my car, an anonymous HR complaint at work. I documented everything. When my wife finally called to talk, I told her there was nothing left to discuss. She'd made her priorities clear. Now she could live with them. Court was brutal but straightforward. Her lawyer tried to paint me as financially abusive. My lawyer brought spreadsheets. 5 years of bailouts. $24,000. 0 repaid. Text messages. Dates. The line where she said I came second. The judge didn't need much time. No alimony, split assets. Everyone pays their own legal fees. Outside the courthouse, her family still tried to shame me. I walked away. Her family imploded without my money propping them up. Parents lost their house. Sister's marriage fell apart. Brother disappeared. And somehow, in their version of the story, it was all my fault. I bought a condo downtown. Quiet, clean, mine. I started seeing someone new, slowly, carefully. She has her own life, her own boundaries, and no one calling her at midnight asking for cash. The last message I ever sent my ex said everything I needed it to. I didn't destroy your family. I just stopped paying for its mistakes. Then I blocked her number. People call what I did abandonment. I call it self-respect. For 5 years, I'd been second place in someone else's life while putting them first in mine. I stopped. That's it. No revenge plot. No screaming matches. Just a decision to put myself first, once I finally understood I always had to. When someone tells you exactly where you stand, believe them. Then act accordingly. The next few months after the divorce felt quieter than I expected. Not peaceful exactly, but stripped down. Like the noise had finally stopped and my brain didn't know what to do with the silence yet. The condo was new, clean, almost echoey at first. And I remember the first night there thinking how strange it was that no one could just walk in. No extra keys floating around, no unexpected knocks, no phone calls asking for money or favors. Just me, the hum of the city outside the balcony doors, and a sense of space I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. I slept better than I had in a long time, not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because I wasn't bracing myself for the next crisis. That constant low-level anxiety, the feeling that at any moment someone else's problem was about to land on my shoulders, was gone. It took time to trust that feeling, though. I'd catch myself checking my phone out of habit, half expecting another emergency, another accusation, another demand disguised as family loyalty. Nothing came, and in that nothing, I started to see how much of myself I'd been shrinking to keep everyone else comfortable. Work became a refuge in an unexpected way. Not because I buried myself in it to avoid feelings, but because for the first time in years, I could focus without interruption. No calls from her parents in the middle of the day. No texts asking if I could transfer money real quick. No mental math about how much I could afford to give without derailing our own plans. My boss noticed the change before I did. He pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "You seem lighter. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I didn't tell him the full story, just nodded and went back to my desk, but his words stuck with me. Lighter. That was the right word. Not happy all the time, not untouched by what had happened, but lighter, like I'd finally put something heavy down. I ran into mutual friends occasionally, and those encounters were always a mixed bag. Some were awkward but kind, clearly unsure what to say but meaning well. Others came loaded with opinions, trying to feel out whether I regretted my decision, whether I'd soften if they framed it the right way. I learned quickly which conversations to shut down. If someone started with, "I know family is complicated, but," I stopped them right there. "It's not complicated for me anymore," I'd say, and change the subject. A few people drifted away after that. I let them. Anyone who needed me to feel guilty to stay in my life wasn't someone I needed around. Through the grapevine, I heard updates about my ex and her family, whether I wanted to or not. Small city, overlapping circles. Her parents were struggling, bouncing between relatives' couches after losing the house. Her sister's divorce was final, bitterness bleeding into every social media post she made. Her brother was still gone, rumors swirling about where he'd landed and who he still owed money to. And my ex was caught in the middle of it all, working long hours, trying to hold everyone together with resources she didn't have. Part of me felt a dull ache when I thought about her. We hadn't always been enemies. There were good years, real laughter, plans that once felt shared, but every time that ache surfaced, it was followed by a quiet certainty that I'd made the only choice that would have let me survive with my sanity intact. The only time I saw her in person after everything was final was accidental. A grocery store on a random Tuesday evening, both of us reaching for the same shelf, then freezing when we realized who the other was. She looked thinner, more tired than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes that makeup didn't quite hide. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she said my name, softly, like she was testing whether she still had permission to say it. I nodded, stepped back to give her space. "I'm glad you're okay," she said, and I believed she meant it. "Me too," I replied. There was a pause, heavy with everything we didn't say. Finally, she nodded, grabbed what she needed, and walked away. I didn't follow. I didn't need closure beyond that moment. Seeing her made one thing clear. Even if I'd stayed, even if I'd paid that money, nothing about her family dynamic would have changed. I would have just been poorer, more resentful, and still second. Therapy helped me untangle the rest. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd tolerated so much for so long. Why I'd equated endurance with love. My therapist didn't let me off easy. She asked hard questions about my own boundaries, about the ways I'd avoided conflict by paying it away. She helped me see that while my ex's family was unquestionably toxic, I'd played a role by never drawing a firm line until the very end. That realization didn't come with shame, just responsibility. I couldn't change the past, but I could learn from it. And I did. Dating again was strange at first. I was hyper-aware of red flags, maybe too much at times. The first time someone joked about borrowing money or made a comment about how I was lucky to be able to afford things, my stomach tightened, but I learned to talk about it instead of stuffing it down. I learned to say, "That doesn't work for me," and watch how someone responded. The woman I eventually started seeing didn't flinch when I said that. She didn't argue or tease or minimize it. She just nodded and said, "That makes sense." That alone felt revolutionary. We took things slow. Separate places, separate finances, shared experiences without entanglement. She had her own career, her own family issues that she handled herself, her own sense of self that didn't rely on mine. Being with her didn't feel like being needed. It felt like being chosen. There's a difference I hadn't understood before. Every now and then, someone would still ask if I ever regretted not helping during that emergency, if I wondered how things might have turned out differently. I thought about it honestly before answering. The truth was, if I'd written a check that day, I would have bought myself more time in a situation that was fundamentally unsustainable. I would have postponed the collapse, not prevented it. The resentment would have grown, the demands would have escalated, and eventually I would have broken anyway. Walking away when I didn't make me heartless. It made me honest. The biggest shift wasn't external, though. It was internal. I stopped seeing myself as the guy who had to earn his place by being useful. I stopped measuring my worth by how much I could give or sacrifice. When my therapist asked me one session what I wanted my life to look like 5 years from now, I didn't include anyone else in the answer. Not because I didn't want partnership, but because for the first time, I understood that my life had to work for me on its own first. I still believe in helping people. I still believe in generosity. But I've learned the difference between support and self-erasure. Support is offered freely and received with gratitude. Self-erasure is demanded and punished when withheld. My ex and her family never wanted support. They wanted access. Unlimited, unquestioned access. And when that access was denied, they called it abandonment. From where I stand now, the story isn't about revenge or winning or watching other people suffer the consequences of their choices. It's about alignment, about finally living in a way that matched what I knew deep down was right for me. The moment she told me I was second, she gave me a gift she never intended to: clarity. And with that clarity, I moved myself to first in my own life. Everything that came after, the fallout, the anger, the loss, was just noise on the way to a quieter, steadier future.